Morning.
Good morning. This is the June 21st, 2023 meeting of the Western Region Board of Review. The time is 9:04 and the hearing is officially open. The members of the board are Richard Andrews, John Shenny, and Peter Plenman. My name is David Flynn, Chairman from the Department of State. It is Andrew Bizdad. We will now hear the scheduled petitions. When you speak, please address the board and give your name, title, and legal address so that our court reporter can have all the information requested. We may have to stop from time to time to consult with our technical staff. In making comments to the board, please provide a descriptive narrative on matters referring to your exhibit to enable the court reporter to enter these into the record. Our first hearing this morning is in the matter of petition 2023-0303. The petitioner is Lavaca Family Greenhouse and Nursery. Nature of grievance and relief sought. The petition pertains to construction of a new building addition to an existing greenhouse of occupancy type M, built of type 2B construction, located at 8441 County Road, Town of Clarence, County of Erie, State of New York. Relief is requested from 19 NYCRR Part 1225, the 2020 Fire Code of New York State, Section 903.2.7, Group M. An automatic sprinkler system shall be provided throughout buildings containing a Group M occupancy where one of the following conditions exists. 1, a Group M fire area exceeds 12,000 square feet. 2, a Group M fire area is located more than 3 stories above grade plane. 3, the combined area of all Group M fire areas on all floors, including any mezzanines, exceeds 24,000 square feet. Or 4, a Group M occupancy used for the display and sale of upholstered furniture or mattresses, it exceeds 5,000 square feet. Please present your case.
We can see the screen there, the Zoom can see that. Good morning, board. My name is Mike Berger with Sutton Architecture at 5409 Main Street in Williamsville. Here to present for Lavacat Family Greenhouse and Nursery.
I'm sorry, could you please spell your name?
Berger. Sutton Architecture, Sutton.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're here today to talk about a proposed project of a new addition to an existing greenhouse of 4,500 square foot of pole barn construction. This project was previously brought in front of this board. The petition number was 2021-0341. That project was never constructed. The client, Chris Lavacat, came to us this year to revise the design, and that's the design we wish to present in front of you today. I just wanted to highlight some of the changes that we've made to the original approval. The original was also pole barn construction, wood frame construction. Although the size at the time was 24 foot by 156 feet, we are proposing a 30 foot by 156 foot construction. We are adding in a loft area at the rear of the building of approximately 1,100 square feet. This would be for secure storage of material and product for retail. The idea of a future cafe, and I'll bring up the floor plan for this just so we can see. The hatched area on the first floor is possible for future cafe, although it's not guaranteed right now, it would be future. And we would like to, the client would like to enclose more of the west wall than the original variance was granted for. These changes we discussed with the building inspector and decided it was warranted that we represent the project in front of you today. Along that west wall, we are still providing a 15-foot 6 wide opening, no walls, no doors, clear pathway directly in line with the existing exterior door from the greenhouse. So there would still be a clear path of exit, which was mentioned in the original approval, that was something we needed to maintain. So we have done that. We've also introduced 4 overhead doors along the west wall. So when in operation and the weather permits, those doors would be open to allow more of that natural open space. The nature of the reason for the enclosure was more to protect product and equipment that would be along that wall. There might be some electronic equipment, some cash registers, things like that, for the retail operation. And it was determined that it might be detrimental to that equipment if it was too close to an exterior condition. Stated before, the previous variance, 2021-0341 was approved for wood construction. And again, in nature will be the same: retail, plant-based, sales and accessories, retail in nature. The space is not planned to be conditioned, neither was the previous version. So the intention of the idea of a sprinkler system being installed in such an area, the concern of freezing pipes, the excessive economic burden to put in a dry system, and that again was granted in the original approval as well. And with that, I would just open up for any questions from the board.
What's on this side, the bottom of that diagram is.
The bottom drawing,
Is the top drawing,
this drawing here?
right? The
Yes.
bottom, area is open all the way across.
This is all open, yes. This area here just highlights the loft nature of the storage area in the back. This is the main floor down here, and then this line represents just where that loft area would be above.
So the wall is open, it's just pillars all the way across?
On the east side,
Yes.
yes.
And that button,
Except for where the storage would be. We do have that enclosed.
that's enclosed?
Yes. But all along from here over would all be just pillars.
You said storage was gonna be on the loft,
Yes, the loft area.
so the underneath is enclosed also?
Well, this is just for structural needs to build a wall up to support the wall above.
Doors to do it, huh?
No, we felt the need to build a wall, structural wall there.
And then what about the wall going into the area? Is that enclosed also? Is it enclosed, is the entire thing enclosed?
The entire area above is enclosed. Back on the first floor, it would just be this wall adjacent here and then the stairwell access up.
So it's not,
This is all open underneath.
so then the existing building is next to that, adjacent to it?
Yes, the adjacent building is here, and I can bring up the elevation.
And what is the distance between the two buildings?
3 feet.
And so they're separate roof?
We do want to adjoin the roof.
That's my question.
We can see here in this detail of an adjoining gutter system. Again, the idea of protecting from the weather,
Right.
the material that's under there. So we do want to enclose just the roof line.
So you're attaching it, basically.
Correct. And this drawing here shows kind of the idea of this is the enclosed loft space. And then these would be the pillars.
And then so I'm just trying to picture this.
Yep.
Project. And then on the existing building, what is along that existing building? The wall, is that wide open also?
Of the existing building is a
Yeah.
greenhouse wall, glass and steel.
It's glass and steel.
Transparent.
Yes, transparent.
With how many openings in that?
I believe there's 2. One's an overhead door at the back, which is how we would gain access to the stairwell up to the loft. And the other one is an automatic door that customers would use. If they start in the greenhouse, they could enter into this accessory space through the sliding glass door.
So you're not exiting anybody through that 3 foot?
No,
distance.
no. It's purely for structure because there's piers for the greenhouse in that location. So to not compromise or get in the way of those, we stepped back a little bit with our new piers for our poles. And it created inherently a 3-foot gap.
So the way I'm looking at it, it's not a wide open exiting. That's what I was looking at. It's
Correct.
not like people can just walk out, get out of the way without, but they can't because there's a glass wall in front.
Correct. But they have the glass entry door, the sliding glass door, and then the pathway to the opening on the new addition that would be here. So that would be a clear path, straight out.
Right, but no, but that opening isn't protected by garage door or anything?
Nope, wide open. Tend to be wide open.
Peter Clayman asking a question. The overhead door that connects up to the stair, the proposed stair the overhead door that connects up to the proposed stair, is that an overhead door in the greenhouse?
Yes.
And that the actual wall, corresponding to that overhead door, is open, except a little ways in is a doorway, for obvious, crowd control, for lack of a better characterization, or keep the.
You're talking about the man door?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's, so security, again,
Security, that's all.
the idea is the loft is a secure storage area for product.
Yeah.
So that door would, and again, only access would be for staff to go get product up and down the stairs. There's no customers up there, there's no retail up there, it's purely for storage.
Why couldn't they make this a storage area, an entire storage area? I mean, based
The
on.
whole
Yeah,
project.
like if it was an S1 or an S2, it wouldn't need to be sprinkled.
Well, there is intent to have retail space on the first
I
floor.
understand that, but what I'm trying to say is that, now it was what, 40, what was the total project square footage?
4,500 square feet.
4,500 square feet. You've taken how much out for the loft area? That looks like it's almost enclosed. You're thinking about some kind of a cafe down here.
The 4,500 is the entire
I
first.
understood,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but you're gonna end up with probably, I don't know, 2,500 actual retail space when you're done, taking all that stuff out, moving everything around. And the only reason I'm saying that is you don't even need a variance if you go S. If they just keep their storage stuff in there from whatever they need all this extra storage for.
Mhm.
It would, Peter Clayman here, I think we would be looking at some sort of fire rating of the building away.
That's true, too.
Built.
That's true.
And that may be done, maybe your concern for extending the building rather than building
That's true.
another building for another fire.
Yeah, that's true too. Fire, I mean, that would be the other option, obviously, is to put some type of a fire barrier across, and it would be a separate building, but.
Right, but with the nature of the greenhouse, you're trying to, you don't want to enclose and block off all that glass.
David Flynn with the question, the loft area enclosed, if there's a problem up there, you said that the space won't be conditioned, it could get very hot up there, greenhouse, lots of glass, some other electrical problem or something. What are we doing to protect both people in that space and the rest of the space if there is a fire problem in the loft space?
I mean,
Is that totally enclosed to the roof line?
the loft space,
Yes.
it would be totally enclosed to it's intended to be totally enclosed to the roof line.
So smoke detection, what are we doing inside that space?
There could be, I believe the existing building does have a fire alarm system. And I know that was part of the original approval, was to have a fire alarm extending into that. It would be something we would be willing to look at.
John Shannon has a question. Where's your closest fire hydrant?
Closest fire hydrant,
Right outside the building, right, it's,
on the street?
yeah, so, yeah.
So right outside the street, so the north side of the building around is by the street, would be the closest fire hydrant.
Maybe you could bring up the site drawing and point it out, please, Peter Clayman here.
I believe in this area here. I have street views too, I can bring up the street views. Sure. If we get to it. Like on the street. Right there.
There it is.
So
So pretty much
from
centered on the greenhouse essentially.
that hydrant to the back corner of this building, I think it's in excess of 700 feet. I believe it violates the fire code.
The back end of the existing building or the addition?
Proposed addition.
So, yeah. It'd be 563,
Gotta be within.
probably five, yeah, I mean, from this is the whole depth. 563 is the whole depth, and there's 182 feet behind, so I think it would be less than 400 feet to the street.
As the crow flies, or is the hose laid out?
If the hydrant is here, because we're only 156 feet, and then this distance here. So as the hose lays out from here, straight over and back, I believe that would be less than, say, 187 feet to the street, and then the 156 to the back corner of our addition. So that's 330 something, 340.
And like I said, is how the hose would be laid out, or
I would assume,
as the crow flies?
well, just a straight line from the street.
That way they're not gonna drive through that wetlands. Understand what I'm saying?
In the parking lot.
The way the hose would be laid out, it'd have to be drawn just like you would drive a truck.
Okay.
As the hose would be laid out. If you're more than 400 feet, then there's a problem. Although that variance isn't before us, but we are gonna be hearing from the building inspector. And has the fire chief been?
We were in a meeting together with them.
And do you have any correspondence from them?
I do not have any direct correspondence, other than the meeting that we had.
What was their opinion?
It was understood that no one was an objection of us presenting for the variance.
But they didn't give you any correspondence? So that could be a problem, that we wouldn't even, regardless of what we say, that's still a problem that goes back to the building department or the fire inspector. Rick Andrews again, so I have a problem with the exiting. I just want to get back to that exit.
Sure.
Generally, when we give a variance for something like this, it's wide open, or people can escape in any direction or many directions. To me, it looks like you have that one large opening. Is that it?
There would be a door at the front. There's a door at the front,
Okay,
there's the opening, there's another door in the back,
okay,
plus the overhead doors, which aren't, need to be egress,
Right.
but they would be open.
okay.
So there's three direct ways out.
And those are 36 minimum?
Yep, of course, yep,
And that width is, and that opening is wide open.
yep. Yeah, those would be egress doors. Obviously, the most common one would be the use of the front door that leads out to the parking lot, but in an emergency situation, there would be a door at the rear plus the opening.
But you can understand our point of view as far as the open side.
Mm-hmm,
Generally, that's open side, just you walk out.
right,
Well, now you've got a building 3 foot away from it and pillars and,
from the side, you're
Right.
saying, correct.
so it really isn't proper exiting.
Peter,
Well, exiting is again, there's legally exits from the greenhouse already.
Coming towards this building.
The legal egress from the greenhouse directly into here, they would come through, plus the other exits of the greenhouse that already exist.
Peter Flamen here, I'm concerned that with Rick Andrews, that there's really limited ways out of the open space. And I can understand exactly where you're talking on that. Certainly, we're looking at a situation where, in my mind, you wouldn't expect anyone in an emergency to go back into the main greenhouse at all.
Correct.
And so you really are limited to that one the one large.
Well, no, you have three. You have the three,
Two other-
the two doors.
The two others are there, yes.
Right.
But,
So no different than any other building. And
yeah,
in a size building of this nature, two doors would be acceptable by code.
right. And then,
And they're at opposite ends, so their distance of separation is acceptable. Plus, we're providing the wide open, 15-foot wide open.
and Peter Kling here again, I realized that only people familiar with the loft would be in the loft. There would not be a public space.
Correct. Storage and staffing, yep.
But getting down from the loft, you would have to go back into the original greenhouse in order to get away from any problems, right? There's no exterior door to.
Correct.
for what-
Although we could put a door on that side.
But you're, so that,
Yeah,
that is a bit of, what's the word I want to say? A bit of travel to get out of that area. That's all.
I think we'd be willing to put either a door or just maintain an opening there. So there's a way out of the space. You'd have to kind of loop back around to get to the public way, but it would get you out.
Again, I think Peter Kling here again, I think Rick Anders has pretty much said the give back or give back for spaces like this out in the open is you can fall out of them and land on the yard and get away readily. That's all. And so a door somewhere to the outside to improve the situation is of course always welcome.
So, Rick Andrews, speaking, so you're looking for a variance for no sprinkler system.
Correct.
So what you generally do is you come in to us and say, we're seeking a variance and this is what we're going to offer in lieu of the sprinkler system.
You understand,
You really haven't offered me anything, or the board anything other than, you really haven't offered us anything.
well, the understanding that, again, this is previously approved and there was an offer for, exiting fire extinguishers and, an alarm system, and we would be willing to offer those same conditions.
Peter Klayman here, Mike, I'm assuming that the original variance did not include the loft.
Correct.
Okay, the original variance did not include the loft, and I'm.
Right,
We can ask
the main changes were the loft, the enclosure of the west wall, were really the structural changes of the building.
Yeah.
Different from the original approved.
But I would expect that the man doors, that show up in the first floor plan, were in the original.
Well, the original was all open, was all
All open. I see. Yeah,
open.
this-
So we're offering the doors as
Yeah.
a continuing our exiting path and allowing options for getting out.
I'm just curious, why the open side against the building? Why not the open side away from the building?
Because again, trying to protect, the greenhouse is gonna offer an inherent protection to the weather for this structure, and the west wall is there to protect from the weather as well. So there'd be, if we put a wall on the greenhouse side, we would not only be enclosing all the glass, which would take away from the greenhouse itself, but it's a redundancy, because there's already a weatherproofing or weather stopping element there. The feeling was that there was a need from the ownership, that there was a need for protection from the weather on the west side.
And you realize that as soon as you attach the building, it becomes part of the building. I mean,
My understanding was the original was also, it was a lean-to roof that was also attached to the
if it's
greenhouse.
attached, it's part of the building, regardless of what the separation is there.
Right,
You're attaching structure to another structure,
correct.
which becomes the full structure.
But again, my only point was the original,
And it was wide open.
project,
Project,
while being wide open, was also, the roof was attached.
okay, but it was wide open.
Correct. Correct.
So there again, You're not throwing anything to it. You're not giving us anything that I could say, oh yeah, I feel comfortable not allowing a sprinkler system in my building. You know, if you were go along with what Peter said, if you would, especially since you've enclosed one side now, that you need to offer more exit doors. But I think
Okay.
that's fair.
Sure.
And I guess that's what the opening there was, the original opening.
The 15, I mean, this was meant to be, you know, a pathway out that was always maintained as clear, oversized 15 foot, so it should be no issue to anyone to get out. But we were trying to, you know, again, give as much protection for the equipment and product inside while also offering an opening that we felt was generous enough to allow exit. But we would certainly be willing to, you know, at this board's discretion, where they would want to see extra doors, we would put, you know, maybe another door in the middle if we felt that was necessary. I just didn't know, I guess with having that be wide open, people are gonna choose that path versus a door. So why have a door right next to a big open space?
Well,
That's why we put the doors at the ends
so-
and the opening in the middle.
and this is my, you know, generally when we issue a variance and we put conditions on it, like that opening has to stay open. So some owner down the road, he sells the place, a new owner comes in and says, why don't we have a garage door on this? The rain's pouring in through here. We're gonna put a garage door on it. And those are all things that, then it becomes an enforcement nightmare for the building code official. And that's the sad part about giving conditions, you know, put has to be that. So, so the more you can offer us to justify the variance, better it is.
I mean, we could, I don't know if there's a number that would be, more comfortable to still allow some protection, but opening that up more would be an option. as well.
Would a second opening like that be acceptable
I would think so, yeah.
along that wall?
Sure.
Peter Claman here again. I was not on the board when it was originally approved. Or was.
Nor did I give the original presentation, so I didn't give the original presentation.
No, again, it may,
We're both in the dark.
it may very well be in the, it may very well be, I was just not at the meeting. In any case, from my mind, the salient difference between, in addition to enclosure is the storage in the loft. And is that critical to your client's business model?
I believe it is, yes.
Could the storage be accommodated on the first floor, closing the first floor area as storage?
Well, then that would get back to your point about limiting the
Right,
the
but
retail space.
could that happen? I mean, along with Peter's conversation there.
I would have to confirm with my client on that, but I don't know if he wants to.
In short, Peter Claman here, Rick Andrews' inquiry is, could that generalized portion of the addition be not accessible by construction to the general public?
In essence, like closing off here on the first floor as well, you're saying, and have
I think.
two stories of it, or just only, or eliminating the loft
In lieu of.
in lieu of
Yeah.
getting rid of the loft component?
Again, I would defer to Rick Andrews. He's
I mean, I would,
much better at,
it's storage, it would then be an accessory, it wouldn't require a sprinkler anyway, but, I would feel more comfortable with that. You know, when you get into a second floor and it's required to be sprinkler the entire building, then you have exiting problems, and I agree with Peter, I think your exit door at the bottom of the stairs would be a definite, without a doubt.
Sure, definitely could do that.
If we went that way, but if your client could consider that, I mean, you know, it's putting them on the spot right here at the moment, but it's something you could ask him if he, in lieu of the loft, if you go with something, the storage area and then below it where it is there. And that's something to consider.
Peter Claman here again. To my best understanding, the 12.6 existing, or 12.8, whatever, the existing sliding door from the existing greenhouse that goes into this area is the only, yeah, that area there. Yep. That's the only for lack of a better characterization, exit of the original mercantile greenhouse. And there are no exits in the area we've been discussing where the storage is proposed.
Along this wall of the greenhouse, the only two openings are the slider door and an overhead door. The overhead door aligns with where they would bring storage
But that
materials through.
overhead door is not an exit because it's an
Correct.
overhead door. That's all I know.
Correct. Yeah,
When the door opens.
yeah.
And then it kicks out, emergency kick out.
I believe so, yes.
Anything else from the board? Is there anyone else that would like to be heard?
Yeah, like if you're building official.
Do we want to hear from, Peter Plainer, do we want to hear from the AHJ?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. My apologies.
Hi, David Burke, Town of Clarence Code Enforcement Officer, 10965 Stage Road, Clarence, New York.
Paul Gross, from the Clarence Building Permit, 6221 Goodrich Road, Clarence Center, New York.
So the reason that we brought this back is because first off, there was a variance granted back in 2014 for the greenhouse for not having a sprinkler and with some conditions, you know, as we all know. And I brought it to Andy's attention, I think it was 2 years ago, when they were gonna put the, like a, I guess you said, like a porch on the side. You know, open all sides and stuff like that. And I just kind of felt that anytime that there's gonna be additions to the building for variances already granted, it should be revisited, just to make sure that there's nothing, none of the conditions are gonna be, you know, thrown out of whack or whatever. Then when it came back with, being enclosed with the possibility of, an assembly area for the cafe with the storage up above being enclosed, you know, and then, the exiting, I just felt it was prudent to bring it back, you know, in front of the board, you know, so they could, you know, rule on it, make a determination.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear, I'm sure I'm heard but speaking, that the entire space is going to be mercantile on that first floor from our preliminary meeting. So, and then the future, the cafe was always a concern of ours, which was something that we're proposing down the road. The original variance was granted in 2014 with 6 conditions, many of them, what she said, were brought on. None of them were discussed. But the big thing, we didn't feel when they were doing the addition, we felt that the original variance obviously didn't extend to the addition. So that's why they've said,
Recommended
come back.
recommended to come back.
Do you have those 6 conditions?
I do.
Can you read them off for us?
Sure. One of them applies to the Wyndham Costello. So the building shall be designed to fully conform to ASCE 7 standards for structural snow and wind loads values as permitted for building falling under performance category 11.1. Number 2, the mercantile use of the building shall be conducted seasonally and during the months permitted by the code enforcement officer. Number 3, the responding fire department shall be kept fully informed of the times when the building will be going into mercantile operation. Number 4, a fully compliant fire alarm system installed in accordance with NFPA 72 shall be provided. Number 5, exit doors shall be placed at every wall of the building to the approval of the code enforcement official. Number 6, fire extinguishers shall be placed at intervals of 50 feet throughout the facility. And that's it. It says furthermore, it shall be noted that the decision of the board is limited to the specific building and application before it as contained in the petition. Pretty much what I.
Thank you. Well, I'll be honest with you, I too have a problem with the cafe, and I wanted to hear what your opinion was on it.
Yes, yeah.
And I would say that if that would have to be taken out before we issue any kind of variance. Have you discussed it all, or I think you have a fire inspector still, right?
Yeah, Joe Saletta.
So have you discussed it at all with him, as far as the distance from the hydrant?
Yes,
Is he was in agreement that it was close enough, the 400 feet?
Yes, I believe, we did discuss it, and I believe it originally was within that 400.
It is, okay.
Yes, yeah, again, it's right out front of the building.
Right. I saw where, it's just, I want to make sure they didn't do it as a pro flight, you know?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people pull that, and obviously that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Those are my questions. Thank you. Yeah, can we have a copy of that? Because we wait.
Can you make a copy here? It's my only copy.
We can, I'll get a copy.
It's on the, I have it on slash two then.
Okay.
We'll make,
I can,
I'll make you a copy.
okay,
Yeah, no problem.
thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here who would like to be heard on this matter? Petitioner, any?
There's the original one, so I have both. Save right there if you want. Okay. Whatever you want to do.
Mr. Flynn, the only thing I have to ask, the,
I would just add real quick that, again, that the cafe was always kind of a vague notion. I don't believe there's anything.
I go with Tom for a second.
Yeah, do you want?
Yeah, Chris Lavicat, 8441 County Road, East Amherst, and I'm the owner of, one of the owners of Lavicat's Nursery. If the cafe is an issue, I have no problem taking that out as something that what's gonna be a full-blown kitchen, I mean, more like coffee for, our clients. That's something I'm gonna remove. I don't even think we can do it anyway after we're talking about zoning. We're kind of looking at it. We left in the drawing because you didn't wanna just pull it out before we do the definite, but I think it's looking like it's, not something we can really do. So I'm fine moving that out. I'd like to keep it enclosed as much as we can as much as we can, just because of protection from rain. That's the western side, that's we get all the wind, that's we get all the rain. And I don't really want to lose the retail space. That's kind of the main driver for this. The storage goes there for, we do need that as well for the products that go there. We have extra pottery and stuff like that. It's just, it would be valuable to our business. I'm not opposed to the fire alarm. I'm sure we can tie into our existing system. That shouldn't be a problem. I'm not opposed to the fire extinguishers, adding extras in. We did that in our first bill, as you heard. I think Mike kind of talked about the exits. I think, for that size structure, it seemed reasonable to me. Obviously, you guys know more about that than I do. If you'd like to see an extra one, somewhere in this vicinity, I'm okay with it. I think up here, again, from a business owner standpoint, it seems reasonable to have two openings here. And I think, I forgot the other one, the other one's back here, I think somewhere. If you want to put another one here, I'm fine with that, give that a little more. I mean, I know it's a give and take, and that's, no problem giving that.
is the building that's adjacent to this building, is that a fire alarm?
That's fire limits, yes.
In that greenhouse?
Yep.
Peter Clayman here, given your concern about the weather, I'm assuming it's south, but the exterior partition of the proposed, where the staircase shows up, if that staircase were not there and storage were on the first floor, you could readily have an opening in that direction that might minimize the amount of weather coming in. Again, the board is very comfortable with, in addition, not having any sides. And of course, the board, I think I can speak for everybody, the board is comfortable with an addition that may have some sort of tent-like door, like the flaps that you might see in a warehouse that tow motors drive through. That might give you some of the protection, but give us a lot of reassurance that people could readily leave the building. That's something you might.
And we can certainly, approach a little bit of a redesign of that stair. Maybe tighten it up a little bit and open it on that would be the southeast end to make that a little bit more of an opening as well. Because really, this, the only intent of this whole back area is for stair access up to the loft, so we could tighten that up and potentially open up the southwest, or so, I'm sorry, it'd be the southeast corner. So again, more opening, another adjacent opening if felt necessary. You know, again, obviously from Chris's statements, it's really just more about weather protection as much as possible. We understand that this needs to be a relatively open structure, but also, trying to find that balance between open structure and what's gonna be protective of his products that, well, weather resistant, I'm sure, but, you don't wanna see them get battered by wind and things like that, so.
Guys all good? Yeah. No one else? Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you. We'll ask, everyone to leave the room as we discuss this, please. Just email it to you.
No, we'll take it.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing, Chief? Good to see ya.
We still have to play with
Yeah, actually, something you want to speak about?
Yeah, regarding the site plan. I can't bring up the site plan, I'm gonna bring something to everyone's attention.
Because
Can we bring it back up?
we're actually off the record, so.
That's fine.
On the record.
The petitioner and the code enforcement officer have had a discussion, and they'd like to go back on the record with some discussions about that. Please proceed, Mr. Berger.
Thank you. Just gonna bring up the drawings again, just for reference. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity. Upon further discussion with the building inspector, we've come to an agreement on some ideas that we would hope would offer up some additional safety features to the building. So it was discussed that the southeast corner of the building, the addition, would be modified to be open outside, to the outside from the addition, as well as taking away the overhead door and introducing an egress door. So there would be an additional egress component from the existing greenhouse, which would offset the one that was lost. And also provide more of an opening. It'd be direct open from the addition to the outside. The only thing, we would just have that door pulled up to the west more to, again, secure that loft space. So now we would have two egress components with direct pathways to the outside through the addition. Thank you.
Do we need, code enforcement officer?
Well, we talked about this.
Up here, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, the cafe, eliminating the cafe. I think that was already kind of discussed, but eliminating the cafe.
Okay, thank you. Just querying the board here, any need for further deliberations based on this, or is we,
Because we basically were what we decided.
so we're good?
No need to,
Okay,
I find no need to go over.
so this is petition number 2023-0303, the petitioner Labacat's family greenhouse and nursery, nature of grievance and relief sought. The petition pertains to construction of a new building addition to an existing greenhouse of occupancy type M, built as type 2B construction, located at 8441 County Road, Town of Clarence, County of Erie, State of New York. Relief is requested from 19 NYCRR Part 1225, the 2020 Fire Code of New York State, Section 903.2.7, Group M. An automatic sprinkler system shall be provided throughout buildings containing a Group M occupancy where one of the following conditions exists. One, a group M fire area exceeds 12,000 square feet. Two, a group M fire area is located more than 3 stories above grade plane. Three, the combined area of all group M fire areas on all floors, including any mezzanines, exceeds 24,000 square feet. Four, a group M occupancy used for the display and sale of upholstered furniture or mattresses exceeds 5,000 square feet. Findings of fact. The proposed project is an addition of 4,680 square foot pole barn structure with a storage loft adjacent to an existing 22,000 square foot greenhouse structure. The building is intended to create additional retail space for outdoor products. A 1,500 square foot area would be enclosed to provide storage in a loft area. Two, the petitioner built a greenhouse in 2015 and were granted relief from the sprinkler system requirement by adding a fire alarm and extra fire extinguishers. Three, the new lean-to structure, partial ceiling translucent and partially steel, will be used for growing storage of perennial plants. The west side of the 156 feet of the lean-to would be open to the outside. In the event of the fire, the existing emergency exit would be used and there would be no further doors or walls to get outside of the building. Four, petitioner is seeking relief for similar reasons that were granted in the past. Financial reasons, as it would be a significant economic burden to have a seasonal greenhouse business pay for a sprinkler system in a large building. Five, the new addition will be unheated and have openings to the elements, so there is a high risk of pipes freezing. Six, the greenhouse primarily consists of displays of flowers on steel benches, and the lean-to would be no different. Seven, the petitioner is willing to add extra fire extinguishers in the outside lean-to display area and bring them in during winter months. There is an existing fire alarm system in the structure now. Wherefore, it is determined that the application for variance as submitted is hereby granted. In accordance with the above findings, strict compliance with the provisions of the Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code would entail practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship and would be unnecessary in light of alternatives which achieve the intended objectives of the code more efficiently, effectively, or economically, and granting the variance would not substantially adversely affect the code's provisions for health, safety, and security. Wherefore, it is determined that the application is granted with the following conditions. One, there will be no cafe included in this project and without any further activity by this variance board in the future at the property. Two, there is no change to the 2014 approval and variance and the conditions contained therein as it relates to the rest of the project. Those 6 conditions include the following. The building shall be designed to fully conform to ASCE 7 standards for structural snow and wind load values as permitted for buildings falling under importance category level 1. 2, the mercantile use of the building shall be conducted seasonally and during the months permitted by the code enforcement officer. 3, the responding fire department shall be kept fully informed of the times when the building will be going into mercantile operation. 4, a fully compliant fire alarm system installed in accordance with NFPA 72 shall be provided. 5, exit doors shall be placed at every wall of the building to the approval of the code enforcement official. 6, fire extinguishers shall be placed at intervals of 50 feet throughout the facility. Further conditions include the following. 1, fire alarms and additional extinguishers in the expansion area shall be per the approval of the code enforcement official. 2, additional means of egress. The loft stair opening at the base of the stairs to the loft shall open to the outside and with a fully approved egress door to the approval of the code enforcement official. There shall be a front door to the expansion area to the approval of the code enforcement area. There should, in addition to the proposed 15-foot opening on the west side of the facility, there shall be an additional 15-foot opening and as well as the proposed man door on the west side of the facility, again, as approved by the code enforcement officer. I'll take a motion to approve.
Peter Klayman will, give a motion to approve.
Can I have a second?
John Shenny will second.
Mr. Shenny, Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Shenny?
Yes.
Mr. Clayton?
Yes,
David Flynn votes yes as well. The variance is granted as conditioned. This decision is limited to the specific building and application before it as contained within the petition and should not be interpreted to give implied approval of any general plans or specifications presented in support of this application. The hearing is now concluded.
I can do it all together.
Somebody will ask that.
So,
Going to do it again.
I've got to recuse myself from the other side. So then somebody else will have to be the chair.
oh, okay, I can give it a whirl.
Let's just continue on to do the Wilson. We can do that one. We can do Amazon players.
Wilson is the Amherst one?
It is. Yes. So you can refuse yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should be, actually, we're changing up the, so,
The next one is Hamburg.
next one is Hamburg, and after Hamburg would be Buffalo?
So,
Well, no, we're changing it up.
Change.
Yeah, we'll change it.
So we're doing Amherst next.
We'll do Amherst next, and then I would gather that if you're going to return, you would return in like, what, 15 minutes?
Oh, that's
Buffalo?
Yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should
Oh.
do.
I'm going ahead.
That is a problem with fire.
You know what I would suggest right now is that maybe that we, still David as chairman, mention to all the rest of the applicants here that all the next 3 cases are gonna be only 3 feet. And if they would like to pull their variances, they.
Andy,
Yeah.
if David is going to recuse himself, he has to step out of the room.
Yeah, we're going a little out of order.
Going a little out of order.
Okay, I'm just letting you know.
Thank you.
Tell Chris that they're gonna listen to her case. Chris, okay. Mr. Page Paul.
This morning. Next hearing this morning is petition number 2023-0185. The grief party is a Williston residence.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, would you like to mention it to all the applicants about the fact that we may have.
Yes.
I'm going to do that. So, for for this matter and for the other matters this morning, there will be, the need for an individual member of the board to recuse himself, which will leave us with a quorum. But in order for the variance to be approved, it would require all three of the remaining members of the board to be in agreement. So we offer the option to either proceed, or you can withdraw or pull your petition to be considered at another, the next meeting of the regional board of review, such that you wouldn't have to have a unanimous approval in order to obtain your variance. So this first one, the Willison residents and the petitioner, number one, do you understand that? And do you want to proceed with Mr. Andrews recusing himself because he is a code enforcement officer for the town of Amherst? And then you would, in order to obtain a variance, you would have to get the unanimous approval of the remaining three parties.
Yeah, we'll proceed then.
Okay, very good.
Okay, and I'll recuse myself.
Yes, and you need to leave the room, Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. As I said, petition 2023-0185, aggrieved party, Wilson residents, nature of grievance and relief sought. The petition requests a variance regarding a fire hydrant adjacent to a single-family home. This application is for a building of type 5B construction. The building consists of 2 stories and has a gross area of approximately 3,500 square feet. The building is located at 1463 Tonawanda Creek Road, Town of Amherst, County of Erie, State of New York. The petition seeks relief from 19 NYCRR 1225, the 2020 Fire Code of New York State, 507.5.1, where required, where a portion of the facility or building hereafter constructed or moved into or within the jurisdiction is more than 400 feet from a hydrant on a fire apparatus access road, as measured by an approved route around the exterior of the facility or building, on-site fire hydrants and mains shall be provided, where required by the fire code official. Exceptions: 1, for group R3 and group U occupancies, the distance requirement shall be 600 feet. 2, for buildings equipped throughout with an approved automatic sprinkler system installed in accordance with section 903.3.1.1 or 903.3.1.2, the distance requirement shall be 600 feet. Petitioner requests approval for increased distance to 500 feet, hydrant to building. 400 feet is required. Please present your case.
Sure. Michael Lukaszewski. I'll spell that. It's Lukaszewski. And I'm from Bammel Architects, Bammel. And so just a short backstory, the owners purchased the property. It was undisclosed at the time that the property had wetlands present, and that kind of limited the options as to where we could put the house. As it is now designed, I brought a site plan. There's 2 hydrants at the street. There's a hydrant approximately 120 feet to the east of the driveway, and then a closer hydrant to the west of the driveway. So there's 2 hydrants at the road. It is a very rural area, and the house is set back to the farthest point. It would be 590 feet to the farthest point of the proposed house on the property. The way we located the house seems to be the most appropriate in terms of the site that we're working with. It's not a 3-story house. We thought that we did get some quotes for a sprinkler system. We got a quote from Davis Almer Sprinkler at a cost of about $48,000 to sprinkler the home. The home is approximately 3,600 square feet. And considering that we're off by about 190 feet. We thought it would be reasonable to request the variance in this particular instance to negate the need for a fire protection sprinkler system or a hydrant on the property. It is noteworthy, the previous fire code, not that we're under that anymore, but had an excerpt that for detached 1 and 2 family dwellings, the distance shall be 1,000 feet. Of course, that's the old code, but the new code does not mention that anywhere in the new fire code. So originally I was trying to lean on there being a conflict. So if you look at the residential code, R 102.4 reference codes and standards. It says the code, this is the residential code which we're under. The codes and standards referenced in this code shall be considered part of the requirement of this code to the prescribed extent of each such reference. And as further regulated in sections 102.4.1 and 102.4.2. And then there's an exception. Where enforcement of a code provision would violate the conditions of the listing of the equipment or appliance, the conditions of the listing and manufacturer's instructions apply. That's not the one, sorry. Let me just check here. 102 regarding conflicts. Conflicts. So R 102.4.1. where conflicts occur between provisions of this code, the residential code, and referenced codes and standards, meaning the fire code, the provisions of this code shall apply. So it was my understanding, and I consulted with a couple of other building officials in the area, that would negate the need of fire protection that's brought out in the fire code, which would be a different code. So nowhere in the residential code does it mention sprinkler systems unless it's a 3-story building. So we thought it'd be worth our time to pursue this and see what the thoughts are from the board. Open for questions.
Mike, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You get a flag lot here and you're only 12 feet wide.
Yeah, so that negates the room for a fire apparatus road. Yeah.
So how do you get around that?
It's 15 feet. Sorry, Trevor, owner, it's 15 feet. We had.
Could you come up and identify yourself?
Yeah. Trevor Willison, homeowner and general contractor on the job. That's actually 15 feet wide. We had to shrink it to 12 because we had to run a bunch of our lines and drain lines from the house from the storm runoff. There was a water line that's gonna be going through there, as well as I think there's one other line that will be going through. So that's why we had to shrink the driveway to 12 feet. The access road to get back there to 12 feet. It is actually 15 feet on the survey print.
It's my understanding that the code requires 20-foot wide access road.
That is, I have not heard anything from the town of Amherst. I think at the apron, it might open to roughly that distance, but I have not heard anything with that from Amherst.
So I think 503.1.1. There's an exception, but that's not relevant, so I'll retract that.
Mr. Chairman, is the AHJ here? Yes. Could you comment on the width of the driveway for us, please?
Yes, Crystal Hall, fire inspector with the town. We're looking at that access road is actually their driveway, which allows 12 feet. So we were okay with that driveway being 12 feet wide. And that's, I believe, 511, I believe is the code section of the
So-
driveways.
Under the purvey of the AHJ approving that access road, you approve.
Right,
Thank you.
okay.
Perhaps you enlighten us. Yeah, I'm sorry. What is does you have a position on their?
Yeah, basically object and I have a letter from the fire chief. With, I guess, this also. They say they're looking for the variance for, not to add a sprinkler system, but it's technically two things that they're going against, which is the hydrant being in excess of 600 feet and the house not having sprinkler protection. So this is kind of a layout. I'm not sure what their site plan is, but
I think you can readily see.
okay. So from here to here, it's 590. To the nearest hydrant, which I measured out, that's another 140 feet this way. So they're at 733 feet.
Understood completely. Okay. And a question for you, Mike. Where am I? I'm sorry, my apologies. Did you get a price on complying to P 2904 of the residential building code, which is more informal than the, which I believe would apply to you?
Actually, no. Well, that's the other thing. So based on the commentary of the fire code, it has a section in there which it talks about residential structures. Residential code is for the structure itself, but the fire code is to be followed for the land and fire protection supplies. So,
Do you know what section that is?
yeah, it's 102.5. It says application of the residential code. Where structures are designed and constructed in accordance with the International Residential Code, the provisions of this code shall apply as follows. 1, construction and design provisions of this code pertaining to the exterior of the structure shall apply, including but not limited to premises identification, fire apparatus access, and water supplies. Where the interior or exterior systems or devices are installed, construction permits required by 105.7 shall apply. So basically, it's saying the structure itself is the residential code, but the land, structures and water supplies and access roads should comply with the fire code.
And I obviously I have to ask the obvious, you will indeed be trenching and bringing the water line back to the building.
Yes. Yep, that's the plan.
So in specific terms,
Yeah.
The trenching cost is already undergone by your client.
Correct, yeah.
In other words, placed on,
Yeah.
at the point that the line has to be a larger diameter, at the point that the line has to have
Right.
further requirements by the local water department, is indeed additional cost. The trenching is indeed already borne by the developer of the property.
Sure, yep.
Would the code require a separate water line for this hydrant, or would it just be a larger service to accommodate a hydrant and the house?
Well,
It's a separate line because they would need, it would need to be a 6-inch, and have a hot box with RPZ.
But if the building were sprinkled, the fire hydrant would be germane, right? And a hydrant by the house.
That's another variance situation. So the variances in the past, at least in Amherst, have been issued for if they sprinkler the house, they were not requiring the hydrant to be moved within 600 feet. Those were the variances in the past. Never one like this, as far as I know, to not have any.
And if it were sprinklered, it would be the residential sprinkler system, right? Okay, then that'd be
13D.
13D. It is interesting, this is partly why we pursued it, because in the fire code 507.5.1, there are a couple exceptions, and I know they're not related to a single family residence, and I was wrong. Yeah, we're not going to be a person, but, so we could technically build an R3 or an occupancy, or a group U occupancy, and still be 600 feet away from a hydrant.
And what is an R3?
R3 would be like a 16-person hotel, congregate living, a boarding house, a fraternity, monastery, a dormitory. And that distance would be, under that exception one, would be reduced to increased to 600 feet. So we thought, geez, this use is so much less, in terms of occupancy and risk factor and fire hazard, that it was worth seeing what the board thought.
But the fire department is saying it's actually 735 feet.
Yeah.
I think to the far-
height.
Yeah, and I don't know, is that to the farthest point of the house, or is it to the,
It's kind of shown on this plan. here.
yeah, so I came up with,
So this is where the house is. This is the remote part of the house. So from here to here, it's 590. It's another 143 to there. Which is further to here, which is that right there. The closest right there.
and so I'm assuming we don't go as the crow flies, because
No.
that would be, yeah, you wouldn't go through this
Yeah.
person's yard.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah, go.
gotta break it.
Yeah,
The neighbor could have a fence.
okay. Good point.
Sorry,
Yeah, no, I didn't think of that.
not that the fence has ever stopped the fireman from walking over.
Right. So to the closest corner of the house, I came up with, from the hydrant to the closest corner of the house, I came up with 590, so that's, I think, where that number came from, but that's. Is there something in the code that says to the farthest distance of the house?
Says all the parts of the facility. So you go to the most remote.
Okay. I guess I was leaning on too that maybe I'm hanging up on this, but the previous fire code said 1,000 feet. The new fire code that's current doesn't mention residences, and I think I've heard talks that the new fire code coming out will specifically address single, but I know that's not here nor there, because we can all go by what's current, so. The owner, I don't know if this is an option, we were trying to think, could we situate the house closer? Could we do a man-made pond with a dry hydrant? Would that alleviate any concerns that the fire chief might have?
Could you relocate the existing hydrant? I don't know.
You can add a hydrant.
Or add a
You could add a
hydrant.
hydrant.
Add a hydrant right by the corner of the
That's why I'm
driveway.
wondering if that, from a cost effectiveness, if that, I have no idea, I can't run the numbers.
Yeah,
But if you add a hydrant, then maybe get you on, I don't know.
I don't know if it's more expensive.
I have no idea.
Hydrants these days cost between $7,500 and $10,000.
For the hydrant itself,
Installed.
with the line.
You got an existing water line there, you want a new hydrant,
Yeah.
that's what they are.
You put a new hydrant in at the corner of your driveway, and maybe that gets you a distance down, but you'd have to run those numbers.
Well,
And if you only install the sprinkler system, you're still not within code, right, Krista?
Correct.
Because
So they would just need a variance. Not have to do the hydrant within 600 feet.
So under R3 occupancies, it mentions living, but I don't know why does it mention that? R3 is, a dwelling unit with less than two, a building with
I
less than
don't
two
do
dwelling.
many R3s, but R3s may be required to be sprinkled.
They are, yeah,
So there's,
but if you sprinkler it, that would negate the need for the hydrant. Or is that the same?
that's a separate.
it increases the distance.
Right,
But to fire chief's point, the R3 is normally sprinkled, so.
right,
The sweeping is less of a concern.
okay,
The issue here is that, file codes assume that, single family homes are sprinkled, and they're not sprinkled in New York State, so there has to be some unity, one way or another.
right.
So it seems like the options that you have at the moment, the owner has, is to withdraw the petition, to explore the options in terms of additional hydrants, sprinklering, whatever the options might be, and then figure out what, if any, variances you would need. Or ask the three of us to proceed to consider your request for variance, understanding the limitations.
Sure.
That even if the variance were granted,
Yeah.
I'm not sure it gives you what you need.
So let me ask this, if we no longer have a fire apparatus access road, is that hydrant doing any good?
It would be a private hydrant, which,
Right, okay.
that's what I'm saying, you did. So I think the cost would be more, you'd have to have the hot box put in for that because it's private. If you had it at the end of the road,
Could the fire truck get down to access the hydrant? It's 12 feet wide of a driveway.
well, it's not gonna benefit you though to have it right in the road because you're still at that point.
No, if I did a hydrant right here at the,
Yeah, and there's requirements where the hydrant is located, you need a wider driveway at that point for like
yeah,
possibly 40 feet.
I guess I'm asking the question, like, can they hook up to the hydrant if it's right here, 100 feet away from the house? At this brook.
It's very expensive to put in a private hydrant.
Yeah,
Typically, they're on a 6-inch or an 8-inch main.
yeah.
You need to buy a 6-inch backflow preventer, a 6-inch meter. There's a quarterly meter charge for that. I would bet to install a private hydrant there, you're in at $30,000 or $40,000.
Okay. So our options are sprinkler the house. If we sprinkler the house,
Then you would come back to a request of variance based on the distance
Distance from the hydrant.
from the hydrant.
Because you're still,
would that be a town variance or a state variance?
it's a state, but it can probably be done administratively, right? I don't know.
Well, it could be done at this hearing right now, right? If you decide to
Yeah.
sprinkler the house.
Yeah, that's
If it's
correct. I think we could grant a variance, we could consider a variance for the distance between the building and the existing hydrant. But the condition would be that the house is sprinkled.
Okay, with that 13,
What it is.
whatever the. Or- Yeah, 13D, you're correct, yeah.
And, would, if you were to, would you consider along this line of changing up the variance, would you consider, the board requiring you to be, have your smoke detection system, linked to a central station? Would you consider that?
Like a ADT kind of security.
Yeah.
And if it's- it can't run.
Yeah, but a monitored system that would automatically, tell the, for the lack of a better position, the local fire department as well.
I think so, yeah.
So do you need to chat with your?
Yeah, what, if you don't mind, if I take a minute.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Please do. Thanks.
Trevor Willis again. I do have, if I got in contact with the county or whatever, and we did, because I have a giant turnaround back here for fire trucks or access turnarounds here. If we did where we moved that hydrant to there with the calculations and it was within the distance, that technically, if they approved it, I wouldn't have to be, it wouldn't be a private fire hydrant then, right? Because it would be tied into their line, it would be, I wouldn't have to do the maintenance on it or anything like that. I'd probably have to just pay for like the install on that or something from that.
That's how it works. You pay for the install, they do the maintenance. You don't have to buy a meter.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy a backflow preventer.
Okay.
Or the hot box.
But I do believe that you should discuss with your design professional and the, local AHJ, if indeed it is within the distance.
Right.
That's,
Yeah.
that I can't.
So once we calculate that, that'll be the deciding factor of that.
Right.
So you should really talk you should really make sure that number is correct
Okay.
before you start talking.
But Trevor, keep in mind though, you're still, the code says 600 feet with a sprinkler house.
With the sprinkler house, okay.
Without it, it's 400 feet, and just that the flag pole of the flag lot is 385 feet.
So I'd be,
This one won't allow a county hydrant to go on private property. You know, if it's at the road, that's one thing, but not down the drive.
yeah, so if the, because what did you say the calculations were on that?
It's 590 from the road to the remote part of the house.
So remote part of the house, so I'd have to
That's
shift,
probably the best.
I'd have to shift the house forward.
So that would be four, yeah, so it might still be 470 to the farthest part of the house.
Okay, so,
But is that close enough where the board would consider it?
yeah, so if I did those two things with that,
That's a tough call. So you're talking about adding a hydrant here at the driveway on public property. That would reduce this number to,
and then gap this closer together, because there's another, what is that, 50 feet there? So that would,
And when you'd have to get it within 400.
from under, so, or you could ask for, maybe a variance of whatever.
70 feet.
70 feet.
that's what the board, would the board, instead of 733 feet, if we were 480
I mean,
feet.
you had site plan approval, I mean, you can't just move it around on the lot if we got site plan approval, you'd have to go back.
Right.
You know, there's setbacks, there's site plan.
No, because I got I was able to put it anywhere, because I already dealt with the Army Corps of deeming the whole land not, whatever it is, wetland.
It's very inappropriate for the board to give approval only to find out that the zone will not allow.
Right, sure. I don't think you need site plan approval for a single family house in Amherst.
No, but I don't know what else is connected with it.
Okay.
That I don't review.
Yeah, that's good, yeah. I understand, yeah. Okay.
You know, there's a lot of questions here that aren't answered. It might be a real good idea to let's go get the answers and come back to our next meeting.
Sure.
And I would heartily encourage you to discuss with the fire official.
Sure.
Exactly what is reasonable on their part with their experience of fighting fires in this area.
Have you had any similar projects where it was increased from 400 to 500, or we can talk about it?
Yeah, I believe that's an
Yeah, I think
appropriate.
Yeah, okay.
Let's do it.
Buy-in by the fire official is critical
Yeah.
to our approval of a variance.
Understood. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so are you guys gonna withdraw your petition at the moment? Consider it refile or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they have a building permit to build the house now, knowing that in the future we'd like to be required to start further. So I think we will table it today,
Okay,
and we'd like to do more research and present it at a future date.
it's fine. You can coordinate with Andy on the.
Okay.
on the-
August is the next hearing date,
Okay,
like the third Wednesday of August.
all right. We'll take it.
Okay, so from, with the consent of the petitioner, matter number 2023, number, dash 0185, is being tabled.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I have a quick question. Excuse me, the contractor in the dark shirt, could I get his name?
Trevor
I'm sorry.
Willison.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Next matter is 2023-0305, the Elf residence. Mr. Kleeman will be recusing himself from this matter. Same ground rules that we laid out. We do have a quorum when Mr. Andrews re-enters. However, for a variance, the variance to be granted, it will require unanimous consent of the three remaining members. So I just want to notify the petitioner of that and
I'm appearing through WebEx, and that's absolutely acceptable.
okay. Let me just find Mr. Andrews.
You're good.
City of Buffalo, all city. Okay. Great. Right, so let the record reflect, Mr. Kleeman has, left the hearing room, has recused himself of this matter. Mr. Andrews has rejoined. So again, this is petition number 2023-0305, Galf residence, nature of grievance and relief sought. The petition requests a variance regarding re-roof with roof covering replacement to a building integrated photovoltaic roofing system on an existing single-family home. The building consists of 2 stories and it has a gross area of approximately 2,764 square feet. Building is located at 44 Knox Avenue, City of Buffalo, County of Erie, State of New York. Petition seeks relief from 19 NYCRR 1220, 2020 Residential Code of New York State, 324.6, roof access and pathways. Roof access, pathways, and setback requirements shall be provided in accordance with sections 324.6.1 through R324.6.2.1. Access and minimum spacing shall be required to provide emergency access to the roof, to provide pathways to specific areas of the roof, provide for smoke ventilation opportunity areas, and to provide emergency egress from the roof. Exception 1, detached non-habitable structures, including but not limited to detached garages, parking shade structures, carports, solar trellises, and similar structures shall not be required to provide roof access. 2, roof access, pathways, and setbacks need not be provided where the building official has determined that rooftop operations will not be employed. 3, these requirements shall not apply to roofs with slopes of 2 units vertical and 12 units horizontal, a 17% slope or less. Petitioner requests ability to comply with BIPV specific requirements of 2021 IRC 324.6 and 19 NYCRR 1225, the 2020 code, fire code of New York State, 1204.2, access to pathways, roof access, pathways, and spacing requirements shall be provided in accordance with sections 1204.2.1 through 1204.3.3. Pathways shall be over areas capable of supporting firefighters accessing the roof. Pathways shall be located in areas with minimal obstructions such as vent pipes, conduit, or mechanical equipment. Exceptions: 1, detached non-habitable roof U2 structures, including but not limited to detached garages serving Group R3 buildings, parking shade structures, carports, solar trellises, and similar structures. And 2, roof access, pathways, and spacing requirements need not be provided where the fire code official has determined that rooftop operations will not be employed. Petitioner requests ability to comply with BIPB specific requirements of the 2021 International Fire Code 1205.2. Petitioner is asked to present their case.
Thank you. My name is Abid Anwar. That's spelled A as in apple, B as in boy, I as in indigo, D as in dog. Last name Anwar, A as in apple, N as in Nancy, W as in Willie, A as in apple, R as in Robert. I'm speaking on behalf of Tesla regarding this matter, and this matter has been discussed with the Buffalo Fire Department prior to this variance being filed. Essentially, what we're proposing to install is Tesla Solar, which is a building integrated photovoltaic product, meaning the solar panels are embedded into the shingles themselves. So instead of traditional rooftop solar where the solar panels are built on top of a traditional roof type, the solar panels will be flush to the roofing assembly, and they're integrated into the actual tiles themselves. The current 2020 New York State fire and residential codes require access pathways to allow firefighters to access the ridge for vertical ventilation purposes. And in regards to solar specifically, the 2021 codes expand on the allowable exceptions by adding an exception number 4, which allows for BIPV systems listed in accordance with section 690.12B2 of NFPA 70, where the removal or cutting away of portions of the BIPV system during firefighter operations has been determined to not expose a firefighter to electrical shock hazards. Tesla Solar Roof is a UL 3741 listed roofing assembly, unlike the current rapid shutdown requirements, which control the maximum allowable current and maximum allowable voltage inside the conductors in the array, and then separately the max voltage in the conductors outside of the array. UL 3741 is a system level approach, meaning the entire assembly is evaluated for firefighter electrical shock hazards. The component assembly requirements for UL 3741 listing are part of our submittal packet as Exhibit 3, which identifies specifically which equipment must be required to be installed to provide a greater level of rapid shutdown protections, which is at a system and assembly level instead of just the conductors. The reason for this variance comes more from a life safety and standardization perspective. In speaking with the Buffalo Fire Department, because the fire setbacks currently under the code, it will not always be clear exactly where on the roof they are placed, and having a building integrated photovoltaic system, the concern was brought up that it would be unclear for firefighters to be able to understand and delineate where those access pathways are. Given the granularity provided in the 2021 IRC and IFC regarding exception number 4, which it's exception 4 in the IRC and it's exception number 3 in the IFC, does allow us to forego these fire setback requirements because we've addressed the electrical shock hazards that firefighters could be exposed to through the UL 3741 listing and installing in accordance with that listing. And the access concerns with residential rooftop solar systems are not present due to the building integrated flush design. And with that, I would say we're essentially just requesting the ability to comply with the latest codes. I know that currently the 2020 codes are based off the 2018 IFC, the I codes, and we are seeking to comply with the 2021 codes, and we believe that that does provide the 2021 codes and that exception specifically do provide a pathway for compliance without any compromises to firefighter safety. And with that, I can open it up to questions, or I'm more than happy to also walk through the actual listing and assembly level certification or the defined interactions that are part of UL 3741, which is the PV hazard control listing, in case there are some questions about the robustness of that certification process.
Oh, Rick Andrews here. Is this a well-approved system, or is that BIPV the testing agency?
I apologize. Would you mind saying that again?
Is this system, the new tile system, is it a UL-approved system, or is it the BIPV tested system?
So it is a BIPV tested. It is listed as a BIPV system. It is not listed through UL. It is listed through Intertech as our NRTL, but it is a UL listed system.
It is, you will approve.
Oh, I apologize. It is a NRTL list system. I apologize. It's just not specifically UL was not an actually recognized testing laboratory used, but it was Intertech used to validate and get the listings for the product.
And so this is an entire, I'm kind of familiar with these systems, so it entirely covers from side to side, top to top. Top to bottom.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it won't. Yes, sir.
Does this home have an attic?
I apologize. The volume is very faint. Would you mind repeating that? And I do apologize.
Does the house that's proposed, does it have an attic space?
It has an attic space. It is not a non-habitable attic space. But yes, it does have an enclosed attic.
So would you object to installing maybe 2 foot by 2 foot vents on either end of the attic space?
What I would request is the ability to, based off the square footage of net free airflow that you're requesting, we could add in vents. The vents that we specifically use are not 2 foot by 2 foot, so the concern there would be, it would be then incorporating in components that are not part of the listed assembly, but we could provide the same equivalent net free airflow using vents that we are able to install on the Tesla Solar Roof.
Okay. That's all I have for now.
What's the position, John Schneider, what's the position of the Buffalo Fire Department on this?
And I won't speak for the Buffalo Fire Department. Well, I guess I'll represent the position that we've discussed with them. They have filed the CO questionnaire supporting this variance, and Commissioner Ronaldo and Chief Morganti are both in agreement and alignment with our request, and they support essentially this variance moving forward.
Chief, is that the case? You support this variance? I'd like to see it. I'd like to hear you. Yeah.
I'm Chief Mark Morgani, Fire Prevention Bureau, City of Buffalo. Background person, this firefighters fight fires from the roof. We get up on our roof, while we're inside, we're in that roof immediately. So I'm worried about my firefighters putting a pike axe or a Halligan through that roof while they're getting water on them. And that system shocking them, maybe not enough shock to electrocute them, but enough shock to jolt them off the top of the building or something like that. So that's my concern. They can't give us paths because their cold shingles look just like the hot shingles. So it's not like a solar panel, that's a solar panel. You can see a solar panel on the roof. You can't see these. So they offer paths, but we won't know where they are because they don't give paths on all sides. I mean, so firefighters won't know the paths where the cold shingles are. So my concern was electrocution or falling off the roofs for the shingles. We're really here for the variance, maybe not for his house, but I know I have to do it for a house. The variance is more for allowing them to use the 2021 code, which gives them a UL listing that says that the shingles, if we shut the power down to those shingles, they're below, I think it's 80 volts on the shingles, and that's not enough to electrocute somebody, and that's in the 21 code. So that now, I mean, because we'll be peeling the shingles off in a fire to get to the roof to start topping holes roof ventilation. So like I said, what I'm really here is I want to hear what you guys think about the variance for using the 2021 code and the UL listing for it. I stand neutral. I'm not for against it.
So you understand that was the reason that the international code addressed it?
Yes.
Because these are new and, that they came out with a different way to fight fires with them.
Yes.
And also that.
I'm sorry, can I get you to state and spell your name again?
Chief Mark Morganti, M-A-R-K, last name M-O-R-G-A-N-T-I.
Thank you.
This is Rick Andrews speaking. So as far as it's addressing it, this problem that they've come up with, they've addressed it in the new international code, but also code enforcement officials have the opportunity to accept new engineering practices based on the fact that these are problems that evolve and that they need to address them. and which they've done, which I was glad to hear. But, would venting on both ends of the attic space also help you out a little bit? Because it would definitely start the venting process.
It would, but we're still not. It's just.
What I mean, along with this 2021.
Yes, yeah, any kind of ventilation would help,
Yep.
but like I said, you can't stop our firefighters.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Done there, done that. Yep, I agree.
Yeah. So basically what I'm looking at, I'm standing neutral. I just want to see your opinion going forward. If you do approve it, do we go to a routine variance every time until the 2021's accepted, or how do we move forward? If you don't approve it, then we don't have to worry about it.
I'm not an expert here on electrocution, but one of these documents says the maximum voltage is 165 volts. I believe that's enough to kill a person.
Yes.
Okay, so
So supposedly this, and I'm not an expert on the electrical part of it either. Supposedly, there's a shut off on the outside for solar panels. There's a shut off on the outside of the building. We shut that down, and I'm sure it's Anwar, yeah, I'm sure he can explain it a little better to you than I can. But when we shut that down, he's telling me none of those panels are gonna be over 80 volts. Which is still more than I like, but the code says it's okay, so I can't fight that.
Okay.
But he can explain how we should. So if we don't shut it down, one of our guys comes up and doesn't shut it down, you're right, those voltages will be up there. Because they're always gonna be hot, whether the power's off to it, they're still gonna be hot from the sun. So.
And one clarification I wanted to add, because it is relevant and I want to be forthcoming, it's not 80 volts. What the 3741 requires is 165 volt sections. It takes a separate approach to quantifying the electrical shock hazards for the system. So I just want to clarify and make sure I did say that. The hard line number in UL 3741 is actually 165 volts. And I absolutely can also go into how it is safe, but I just want to interject and make sure I corrected that voltage value.
So it's not 165?
It is 165 is the maximum. I apologize. I thought I heard 80 volts. So I wanted to clarify and say it is 165 volts maximum allowed voltage upon actuation of the rapid shutdown initiation device.
Okay, well, once it's shut down, what is the voltage?
And that is, it will be a maximum of 165 volts once it is shut down. And when it is operational, it is allowed to be up to 600 volts, just in line with the National Electrical Code and what is allowed for residential solar installations.
So the shutoff is at the ground level. You turn the shutoff off. Is the grid that's on the roof still hot?
So I'm sorry, would you mind repeating this last part of that question? If you initiate the rapid shutdown?
Okay. So you've got a shutoff at ground level. Okay, there's a fire, the fire truck rolls up, somebody turns the shutoff at the ground level. There's still voltage coming out of the panels on the roof. So any of the wiring that's upstream of the shutoff is still hot. Is that correct or not?
Hot, yes, with reduced voltage, and I can go into that after, but short answer, yes, it is still hot.
Okay.
And if you can allow me to explain, I can explain what happens after that initiation in terms of reducing that voltage. Let me share my screen. I can go over. So how the system is installed, and I'm going to the wiring detail right here, is every 10 modules at max, which is what's required within our listing, you have something that's called a mid-circuit interrupter. And actually, let me zoom in so there's a little bit more clarity on what I am showing the team. So what happens is when you have these mid-circuit interrupters that are within the string itself. And what happens is when you initiate the rapid shutdown, the MCIs will open. And what that means is now instead of having one continuous string, you have a segmented portions of the string that are electrically isolated from each other. So because the MCIs would all go and open, instead of having one long continuous string, these tiles right here would be electrically isolated from the rest of the string, and that would carry on through the remainder of the string and array as well. The MCIs, what they do is they do break up they open their connection, which means that now those conductors although they're still hot within the range of tiles that are between the mid-circuit interrupters, they are voltage and current limited, essentially because of the isolation that the mid-circuit interrupters provide. And those are part of the UL 3741 listing, but I can go to that page as well.
What is the voltage in those tiles then?
So in between each MCI to MCI connection, the max voltage that you would have is 165 volts.
And is that enough to electrocute someone?
It is not. When a firefighter is using standard structural firefighting PPE, assuming that there is no damage to the PPE, which would warrant replacement of that equipment under current firefighting standards, and that was part of the scope of UL 3741, was for this to be based off of the electrical shock hazards a firefighter would be exposed to with standard issue PPE, structural firefighting PPE.
What kind of amperage is there at 165 volts?
I apologize. Say that again.
What's the amperage in that circuit at 165 volts?
So you have no amperage because you have no current flow. That would require the connection to not be isolated to have a current built up in between those conductors. And that's why the code focuses on voltage instead of ampacity.
So putting an axe through that one of those tiles could not electrocute a firefighter.
Correct. And the most important part of this is a rapid shutdown initiation device, just like under the current codes, has to be initiated. And then, yes, that statement would be true. And I can actually scroll up just to the list of defined firefighting interactions to help just show what was tested. So the defined firefighter interactions with the PV array would be falling on the exposed components, stepping or walking on any exposed component, contact with array components by firefighter holding tools, held hose line spraying array, held hose line with metallic fittings in contact with module or other exposed components, held hose line spraying array, crawling on any exposed component, falling onto exposed components with held tool, falling onto exposed components with tool attached to firefighter dude belt or body, ladder or ladder hooks which may impact array components during placement, and firefighter grabs exposed array components for stability. And so what UL 3741 did is it did take a scientific approach to where they went into as far as looking at the sweat composition of male and female firefighters to understand what the resistance of the human body and sweat would be for a standard firefighter, looking at the resistance and capabilities of standard firefighter PPE. And within that, multiple different hazard levels were set and established. And so if a system does not meet the requirements of UL 3741, there's requirements for additional mitigation equipment or components that would be required. In our case, we do not require any additional components. And part of that is because on the rooftop, you would require two separate points of contact with this faulted exposed system to even be able to expose yourself to an electrical shock hazard due to the construction of solar roof, delineating from typical solar panels that have that metal frame enclosure.
So what you just read, I didn't hear anything about puncturing it with an axe.
And so that would be under firefighter grabs exposed array components for stability and contact with array by firefighter holding tools, held hose line spraying array. And within 3741,
it says holding tools. It doesn't say. What I'm trying to say is if they went up there with an axe and actually put it through and they're kneeling on there, so there's 2 points of contact. That's what I'm questioning.
Yeah, and so the simple, and I guess I can pull up the actual standard itself to go through the actual testing, but it would be 2 points of contact with exposed energized portions of the array would be what was evaluated with the lowest resistance path, which I believe is left hand through hip. The UL 3741 analysis is done in a worst case with damaged and faulted PV arrays. So the assumption is that this is the goal essentially. Sorry, I apologize. Go ahead.
So the array is open somehow. They busted it open. They fell on it. Something caused it to be open so that it's exposed.
what I would say is, just as a reminder, this is building on the current requirements already in the 2020 codes, whereas these codes are only looking at conductors. So even the question we're discussing now, well, only the voltage in the actual conductors is being controlled, whereas UL 3741 is looking at the entire assembly, including enclosures, meaning if you have rooftop junction boxes or any other equipment that is on the roof, meaning all of our other tiles as well, dummy or non-energized, those are also captured within assessing this electrical shock hazard, with the scope being specific to firefighters, because only firefighters would be interacting with damaged arrays in the type of interactions that we see.
Didn't they originally, when they originally designed the system, didn't they have different color or different texture tiles that were the cold tiles at one time?
No, it's always been that they've just always been sleek and aesthetically identical to each other.
And then one last,
I would clear. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I would just say, under the current 2018 codes, we can install the system absolutely fine. We can provide access pathways as well. What the reason for this variance and where that concern comes in is because they are flush and they are aesthetically identical to each other. For the most part, this is really to get away from a concern that I think goes directly outside of the actual language of the code, which is how are firefighters now, which is the problem we're addressing here, which is how are firefighters able to identify access pathways when you do have a building integrated photovoltaic system?
Right.
Because we could absolutely provide the pathways.
The final question I have is, but they wouldn't be identified. Yes. They wouldn't be identified.
Correct.
So the last question I have for you is that is there any signage in the new standards, signage or something to draw the attention to the fire department so they know, number one, that it is solar, number two, that the disconnect is located someplace?
Absolutely. The same exact signage and placarding requirements are in effect for typical solar systems, including the placement of that placard with a physical identifier, which we will see, or with the map, which we will see right here. The same exact placarding that is required for solar systems is required for building integrated photovoltaic systems as well. And the same exact labeling that is required for traditional solar systems is also required for these building integrated photovoltaic systems. So at the ground level, you're using the same exact inverters, the same AC/DC converters, so same inverters, same combining equipment. You have the same exact labels and the same placarding that you would see if you were to arrive at a home that just had typical solar panels.
So this question would be for the chief. So, sorry. So if we determine that we would like him to put the pathways in, is there something that the fire department would have to implement in their training procedures that this, on this type of a roof, that this is where these access points are? I mean, up the sides, which they are now, they're required to be up the sides and across the.
So we've discussed that. I mean, they could do one side like that, one side completely hot, so the issue is we don't know which side is which.
Right.
If they did all the sides, I guess that would help a little bit.
Yeah.
If we did the whole roof.
Right.
Where we did both sides, we did the top, it's cold, and, had a section and stood to that criteria. The problem is that all of the installers are gonna do that, so we can squeeze a few more panels in there,
Right. And that's under the old way anyway.
The old, yeah, so if they give us their pathways, that's fine.
Right.
Our issue was, we can't figure out what the pathways are.
Right.
They can't show us the pathways.
And that is also addressed under the 2021 I-codes, is where if you are absent of the UL 3741 listing and you have what are considered hazards in plain sight, additional labeling requirements are then required. So this concern of identification is part of where I said the 2021 I-codes provide additional granularity on how for these systems to be able to comply. The markings for hazardous, hidden in plain view, shock hazards is also part of the 2021 I-codes, and it similarly has the same exact exception for UL 3741 listed PV hazard control systems.
But do they address pathways?
In the 2020, I can share my screen again. It is, you have two separate sections on this. So we have our typical R324.6 for roof access and pathways. And then when we come down for, it is in the actual fire code. Sorry, bear with me for 1 second. It's a separate section that was added in the 2021 IFC regarding hazards in plain view for BIPV. So this section right here, 1205.2.3, where BIPV systems are installed in a manner that creates areas with electrical hazards to be hidden from view. Marking shall be provided to identify the hazardous areas to avoid. The marking shall be reflective and be visible from grade. And then you do have that same exception that we see that we discussed earlier for BIPV systems that are, UL 3741 listed, which is part of that 690.12B2 compliance of NFPA-7B.
So what are these? Wait, give me a typical example of what you're explaining there. Where would
what would be a marking that we would see for a system that has these hazards in plain view?
On the roof itself?
So what this code requires is correct. On the roof itself, visible from grade, you would have to mark it if there's these shock hazards being hidden from plain view, which a BIPV system has. And then for a UL 3741 listed PVHCS, that is not required because you do not have electrical shock hazards being hidden in plain view. That is part of what 3741 is assessing.
We wouldn't have to. Okay. I understand. Okay, understood.
So I apologize. Did I not? If I did not answer your question, I do apologize. And I would just ask to restate it.
It did.
So basically, you're saying there's no electrical shock, even though 165, people have died at 60 volts. You're saying there's no electrical issue because there's no amperage at all. They're telling me when they cut those things, there's no amperage.
Correct, because these circuits are isolated. The isolation essentially current requires the path of direction or flow, which you do not have because there is the isolation that it provides. And then the 165 volt value, I would have to look up and I can provide this to the team afterwards, but within UL 3741 itself, it provides voltage ranges and what the actual perceptible current, maximum current that a firefighter could be exposed to with their structural PPE. And with 165 volts, that was determined to be the value at which contact with standard structural firefighting PPE, this would not be a hazardous voltage. And that comes from the standard itself and not something that I'm just trying to share to the team. And I'm more than happy as well. If the team has time, we can go through the 3741 standard itself. It is a bit extensive, but they do have a very large portion in how these shock values and ranges were identified. And this used a lot of what NIST has done in the past and what SRI has done in the past as well. And then additional testing based on human body composition and sweat composition as well for firefighters.
Would you object to us requiring, and I guess you wouldn't be the homeowner, would be the person, but to requiring some type of venting on the eaves, just because this is a variance and it isn't the standard right now? And it would at least give them some venting procedures some venting that would happen before the building actually, broke through the roof.
Yeah, and with that, are we referencing in excess of just additional ventilation requirements that would be required for this attic? Would this be some prescriptive additional net free airflow requirements for the attic? Because currently there is that one. Okay.
Yeah, above and beyond what the code requires.
I do not believe that should be necessary because our system can comply within the requirements of the current 2018 code. So I don't believe this variant should instill additional requirements. That said, if that is the discretion of the board, absolutely. and we would just have to, I guess, understand more of what that would be. But I would, I guess, go back to the 2020 New York State Residential Fire Codes do not address or require this delineation between pathways, that it's simply for BIPV systems similar to any other system, provide pathways. We're absolutely able to do that. And then I guess this would be more of a appeal instead of a variance type application. Instead, you know, we're just trying to proactively comply with the new codes to address firefighter concerns, but I do not believe that should expose us to additional requirements for installation of these systems.
If I may interject, can you identify yourselves? My name is Patrick Elf, ALF, at 44 Knox. I'm the homeowner in question here. I have no reservations about additional venting placed in the front or back of the house. There is currently windows in the attic. Again, it is uninhabitable space, but there is windows up there.
It's not heated or air conditioned.
Correct, nothing. I have no problem with additional venting if that over top of those windows, if that would please the board. In addition to that, I also have no problem with additional placards being placed on both sides of the house. To Mr. Anwar, can you pull up your picture of the layout of hot versus cold tiles, please?
Yes, you asked for the layout. Let me pull that up.
Did you say you have no objection to that?
No.
So the pathways would be somewhat identified.
That's exactly what I'd like to address here is where, posted on the side of the house next to the shut-off and on the opposing side of the house so that whoever is responding can see what is hot and what is not at a single glance.
And then was it the site plan view that the team had requested that I pull up, or the page that we have the photo showing the actual residence as well?
The PDF you had up earlier that had the layout of the roof.
Oh, okay, perfect. This screen, this page right here?
Or
what? Oh,
website with the code.
Fire code, yeah.
I apologize, you cut out, and I really apologize for the difficulty through the online streaming. Not my goal to make this more difficult for your team. But if you could repeat one last time what page you were looking for, I can absolutely navigate to that now.
Yeah, we are currently viewing your screen and we can see the code website. I'd like to see the PDF that shows the layout of the hot tiles versus inert.
Absolutely, I apologize. I didn't realize it was restricted to only the.
There you go.
All right, and then going to the layout.
So if a placard such as this to show what is a hot tile and what is inert over the entirety of the roof, again, clearly visible on both sides of the structure, so any responding individual can see, hey, the back half of the house has more than a 36-inch setback and access way. Even though we've already established that there is no electrocution shock for tampering, with any of the hot tiles, still want to make it extra clear because yes, safety is paramount.
Sounds good, thank you.
Hey, anything else from you guys? No, good. Anybody else from here want to be heard? Okay, we'll ask you to leave so we can deliberate and we'll go off the record.
Thank you, team.
Please.
We're on the record.
Thank you. Okay, this is petition number 2023-0305, Alf Residence, Buffalo. Findings. This variance request is specific to roof access and pathways for BIPV systems. Tesla is requesting the ability to comply with the 2021 International Fire Code, section 1205.2, and 2021 International Residential Code, section 324.6, in lieu of 2020 New York State Fire Code 1204.2 and R 324.6 for the proposed installation of Tesla solar roof. The respective code sections in the 2021 international codes provide greater granularity on roof and access pathway requirements specific to BIPV systems. This level of granularity is absent in the 2020 state codes, which are based off the 2018 I codes. 2. The 2021 I code specifically expands on roof and access pathways for BIPV systems and addresses the need for markings of access pathways where hazardous conditions are hidden from plain view. Through incorporation of UL 3741 PD hazard control systems into the respective fire and residential codes, systems evaluated and proven to not expose firefighters to electrical shock hazards when cutting away or removing sections of the assembly are provided an exemption from marking requirements and roof and access pathways. 3. BIPV systems installed in compliance with 2021 IFC 1205.2 and 2021 IRC R324.6 and compliant with allowable exceptions for PBHCS listed BIPV systems provide a greater degree of protection from electrical shock hazards to firefighters than the current codes. Current rapid shutdown requirements only control the allowable currents in conductors inside and outside of the PV array. UL 3741 listed PBHCS assemblies are evaluated at the assembly level specifically for electric shock hazards during rooftop firefighter interactions, which is a rigorous scientific-based approach to evaluating and controlling electrical hazards associated with the entire assembly instead of only focusing on allowable currents inside conductors. Forward-looking compliance to the 2021 I codes and 2020 NFPA 70 provides a pathway for greater assurances of firefighter safety than current codes. Firefighter safety is enhanced through forward-looking compliance with the latest I codes. 4. Tesla solar roof meets sections R324.6 in the 2021 IRC and section 1205.2 of the 2021 IFC through the following. 1. Tesla solar roof is a building integrated photovoltaic system that is listed as meeting the standards of UL 3741 for PV hazard control systems and is installed in accordance with 690.12 B2 of the NEC. 2. RSD requirements in prior code cycles only controlled maximum voltages allowed in conductors post rapid shutdown initiation. UL 3741 is a rigorous scientifically driven analysis of the entire assembly for firefighter electrical shock hazards. 3. Per R324.6 and IFC 1205.2 and 1205.2, BIPV systems that meet section 690.12B2 are not required to have access pathways or emergency escape and rescue openings. 4. Building integrated flush design negates access concerns typical with rooftop solar panels that act as a physical impediment to firefighter access. 5. UL 3741 listed PD hazard control system addresses electrical shock hazards at the assembly level. 6. 2020 NEC 690.12B2 compliant PBHCS listed systems have been evaluated to not expose a firefighter to electrical shock hazards when removal or cutting of the way of the BIPV system is required during firefighting operation. 7, mid-circuit interrupters isolate the array into 165-volt sections when rapid shutdown is initiated. Isolated circuits are voltage limited and lack current flow. 8, when typical firefighter PPE is utilized, solar room does not create a shock hazard during vertical ventilation interactions. In accordance with the above findings, strict compliance with the provisions of the Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code would entail practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship and would be unnecessary in light of alternatives which achieve the intended objective of the code more efficiently, effectively, or economically, and granting the variance would not substantially adversely affect the code's provisions for health, safety, and security. Wherefore, it is determined that the application for variance as submitted is granted with the following conditions. 1, enhanced signage above and beyond that which is required by applicable code provisions shall be provided on both sides of the structure, showing hot and cold tile areas on the roof. And 2, with the approval of the code enforcement officer, 2x2 vent areas shall be provided on each end of the subject premises. Can I have a motion to approve the variance?
I make the motion, we approve it as read.
John?
I'll second it. Rick Andrews.
Very good. Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Shenny?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn, myself, I vote a yes as well, so the matter carries 3-0. This decision is limited to the specific building and application before it as contained within the petition and should not be interpreted to give implied approval of any general plans or specifications presented in support of this application. The hearing is now concluded.
My last question is, they're gonna become more often. Yep. Routine variance?
Well, it could be a routine variance.
And if they're similar buildings, residential buildings, yeah, it's pretty similar to routine variance from now on then?
Yes,
So based on this, I'm gonna just.
based on this,
You're
here.
gonna move it down. Okay, did you hear that?
I believe I did that. Based off this, any additional projects would just be a typical routine variance, but a variance would still be required for any additional applications.
Yeah, so you still need an application, but we don't have to go to the board, it would be routine, it would be granted probably by the week, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay,
Awesome. Thank you very much.
no problem. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I'll just note for this last matter, David Flynn recusing myself, and Peter Kleeman would be the acting chair for this matter.
Thank you.
I start out all the way.
Oh, did you make a copy? Thank you.
You better get a quick break.
Oh, no, we'll go right.
Okay, great. How's it going? Nice to finally meet in person.
Andy, in the future, if we ever have anything like that where we have a variance, if we can include in the packet, that would be helpful.
Yeah, because he had it, he didn't submit it, he should
Oh,
have
okay.
submitted it.
Yeah, that really helped, having that other additional information on Lava Cats.
Yeah, I think I agree. Okay, guys, take care. Okay.
Thank you.
This is Peter Klayman, temporary chair, to start petition number 2023-0284. the aggrieved party is the Amazon building in Hamburg, and the nature of the agreements and relief is petitioner requests a variance regarding alterations to an existing building. The building consists of one story, type 2B construction, A3/B/S1, and has a gross area of approximately 83,620 square feet. The building is located at 3920 Bayville Road, Town of Hamburg, County of Erie, State of New York. The petition seeks relief from 19 NYCRR 1221, the 220 Building Code of New York State. F for fire code, F for fire code and building code, 903.3.1.1, NFPA 13 sprinkler systems. Where the provisions of this code require that a building or portion be equipped throughout with an automatic sprinkler system in accordance with this section, sprinklers should be installed in accordance with NFPA 13, except in sections 903.3.1.1 and 903.3.1.2. The petitioner requests permission to use the most recent edition, the 2022 edition of NFPA 13, instead of the specified edition in the 2020 Building Code of New York State.
Got it. So, I'm Eric Okarowski, that's E-R-I-C, Okarowski, O-K-U-R-O-W-S-K-I, and I'm with Harrington Group Incorporated. You might see that abbreviated as HGI. And our address is 3237 Satellite Boulevard, Suite 525, Duluth, Georgia, 30096. Hello, I'm Eric Okarowski, and I'm a fire protection engineer with the Harrington Group. We've been hired by the tenant of the facility to determine where sprinkler protection is required underneath conveyors in the state of New York. The building was constructed in 2022, but has not been occupied. The building is planned to be used as a delivery station. Products will come in from distribution centers and they'll be sorted and loaded into vans for final delivery to the customer that same day. Sprinkler systems in the existing shell building are early suppression, fast response systems, which we refer to as ESFR in the industry. NFPA 13 defines an ESFR sprinkler as a type of fast response sprinkler and is listed for its capability to provide fire suppression for high challenge fires. For reference, our facility uses K168 ESFR sprinklers designed to protect cartoned, unexpanded Group A plastics in piles and racks up to 35 feet with a maximum ceiling height of 40 feet. We're submitting this variance request because the 22 edition of NFPA 13 is the first edition that directly addresses the sprinkler requirements underneath medium and low-level conveyors in buildings that are protected by ESFR systems. So, every edition of NFPA 13 contains general obstruction rules for sprinklers and specific obstruction rules for ESFR sprinklers. A strict reading of the obstruction rules in the 2016 edition of NFPA 13 for ESFR sprinklers could lead one to determine that they're required underneath conveyors that are wider than 2 feet. In our professional opinion, these rules were written for obstructions near the ceiling that exist above storage that prevents water from effectively reaching and wetting the commodities being protected. These obstructions are typically lighting, ductwork, electrical conduits, and other utilities located near the ceiling above the storage. The intent of these obstruction rules is to make sure that the water is reaching the lowest tier of combustibles, whether they're on conveyance or at the bottom of a rack structure. The sprinkler spray discharge patterns are umbrella shaped, which means that the higher an obstruction is, the more disruptive it's going to be to the spray pattern. Building codes and standards are regularly updated to provide additional protection where the previous codes were found to be inadequate, and to modify requirements that were found to be overly burdensome. Updates to the NFPA 13 in 2022 included for the first time provisions stating where sprinklers are required under conveyors in buildings protected by ESFR systems and where they're not required. These provisions are found in section 14.2.11.4 in NFPA 13, which we'll be discussing in more detail briefly. Under these new provisions, sprinklers are not required under any conveyors that are less than 4 feet wide in buildings protected by ESFR systems, and the code further subdivides the types of conveyors into belt and roller conveyors. Since roller conveyors have openings that allow water to pass through and reach hazards below, they're only required to have additional sprinklers underneath when there's high piled storage below the conveyor. High piled storage is defined as storage greater than 12 feet of class 1 through 4 commodities, although that is reduced to 5 feet in some jurisdictions for higher hazard commodities. It's important to note that there will not be any storage underneath the conveyors, either low or high pile. Chapter 14 of the 22 edition provides the installation instructions for ESFR sprinklers, and section 14.2.11 stipulates the obstruction rules. I would now like to briefly walk through the provisions in section 14.2.11.4, which is the new section that's been added to the 22 edition that directly addresses conveyors. I'd like to refer to Exhibit 1, page 2, Figure 1, which contains the excerpt of NFPA 13, 14.2.11.4. So 14.2.11.4 only requires a single provision to be applicable. For our building, this is going to be subsection 6. Subsections 1 and 2 determine which type of sprinklers are permitted when sprinklers are required under the conveyors. Subsections 3 and 4 govern belt conveyors, which are not applicable to this project. All of our conveyors are going to be the roller style conveyors. It is worth noting that belt conveyors that are 4 feet or less in width with no high piled storage underneath are not required to be sprinkled.
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. So subsections 3 and 4 govern belt conveyors, which are not applicable to our project, but it is worth noting that the new edition of NFPA 22 says that even belt conveyors 4 feet or less in width do not require additional sprinklers over here. Subsection 5 is not applicable because our roller spacing does not meet the minimum spacing requirements for that provision. So as we said before, subsection 6 only requires sprinklers under roller conveyors where there's high piled storage underneath. As we mentioned previously, there's going to be no storage under our conveyors, low piled, high piled, any type. Administrative controls by the tenant will be put in place to ensure that this is maintained. Administrative controls will include striping that indicates the staging locations for product being ready to load, and also include signage and chains and locations where staging is not permitted. All of these will be in combination with employee training. Based on this discussion, HGI is requesting this variance application be accepted to allow the provisions of NFPA 22, the 22 edition of NFPA 13 to determine where sprinkler protection is required underneath conveyors. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions the board members have, and I greatly appreciate your time.
Okay, Rick Andrews speaking. So I don't really necessarily agree with your statement regarding obstructions. I mean, obstructions are for any level, from the floor all the way up. I mean, we consistently had problems with different types of things, not necessarily rollers. They could be something else that's at the floor level. It still has the same problem, or, has something underneath that you could store under. But anyway, that just being said, I just wanted that for the record. What is the definition of medium and low level conveyors?
There's not an actual defined term, but what we're referring to are conveyors that are not above the storage. They're down low. They're below the top level of storage.
As they just mentioned, medium and low. You mentioned in your brief, they're medium and low level.
There's no defined term, but when I'm using that term, we have in our facility, we have conveyors that are going to be at 32 inches, which we're considering low level, kind of waist level and down, and then medium level conveyors are going to be above that, but they're going to be below the top level of storage. And for our situation, we have conveyors that are 11 feet off the ground.
And so you stated that there'd be no storage below these conveyors.
That's correct.
And so that probably would be a condition if we accept this? Just because then we are granting you the new standard, but yet then we're limiting no storage, so there is no hazard.
Yes, and that's actually part of the code. And it specifically talks about high pile storage.
Yeah, we don't want to.
But we're not gonna have any storage period.
And then, we probably will put in here also that your conveyors must be roller type. And that way, there's no problem with either way.
I spoke with the conveyor designer yesterday just to make sure I fully understood the system, and he confirmed it's roller conveyors. Oh,
very good. That's all I have.
Peter Kleiman here, informally being the chair. Can I address the AHJ and what their opinions of this matter are? Given there's no other questions for the presenter?
Jeffrey, are you online?
There.
We can't hear you. You might be muted. Let's see if I can call.
While we're on that subject, I believe Andy, grant a variance that's very similar to this? Was it a package though? Was it other items too?
It might have been a package.
I think it was exiting, and I believe the standard wasn't written yet, obviously.
Yeah.
The PA standard wasn't written yet, but we basically did the same things. We no storage underneath, we limited them to, I think, at the time, 3 feet, but what size would these, are gonna be 4 feet?
They're 4 feet from roller to roller. They have about another 1.5 inches, so it's 51 inches actual, but nominal 4 feet.
And if you're familiar with open roller type, they do have the filtered water.
There's gonna be inch gaps between each roller.
My concern in speaking with the AHJ is that.
Hey, this is Jeff.
Your proposed method of detailing the no storage underneath containers is consistent with his understanding of how readily it can be observed on periodic inspections. That's all. That's all that really is. And that. So my best understanding, Rick, we are approving the entire standard. We're not approving an individual item of the standard.
Correct.
You're approving the 2022 edition in its entirety.
Yeah, its entirety, which is actually more prudent than picking and choosing.
Right,
understood.
Picking and choosing can be dangerous. This is Peter Kleiman. I'm informally the chair of the variance board. Do I have Jeffrey on the line, please? Okay, it's appropriate for us to check with you that indeed you're, in communication with the applicant and are comfortable with the applicant's, method of detailing, that there'll be no, preventing or signage or whatever, that there's going to be no storage underneath. And then there was going to be, Rick Andrews, can I trouble you for the other requirements?
That they would be the roller type conveyors.
Specifically roller type conveyors.
Which are open.
Which are open and not belt type conveyors. I'm presuming you're on board with these. Are you on?
I cannot hear him at all.
or can you put it closer to that?
We're gonna have to move the speaking device closer to so that the
Take it around the other way.
clerk, so that the recording person can catch your name and the details. Could I kindly ask you to reiterate what you just told us, so that the recording clerk can hear it? Excuse me, can the clerk hear this, or do we have to get closer?
I can hear a lot better than before.
Okay.
Okay, please start, so the clerk can hear this and record
Sure, my name is Jeffrey Skripek. That's Skrzypek. And I'm a code enforcement officer out of Hamburg. And we have been in communication with Eric about this sprinkler system and using the newer version of NFPA. We are fully aware of what they were looking to do, and we are very good with what they want to do. We did hear about the no storage underneath the conveyors. That's something that started, there's data from Eric all along from the beginning, and also about the roller conveyors, not using a belt style, but using the rollers.
Good.
And we're in favor of that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
you have anything else?
Really, unless you need anything from us.
Okay.
We're good.
We're good. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
So, if no one else has anything to offer for this matter, we would like to take the meeting into deliberation, and we would ask you to leave the room temporarily, and we will deliberate. I believe, Andy, you may have to mute.
Yes.
Potential findings. This is Peter Flannan. He's the informal chairman of the variance board for this last item. And the findings of fact are the facility has early suppression fast response ESFR sprinkler systems at the roof deck intended to protect class I-1-4 commodities and carton unexpanded group A plastics, CUP. The tenant now desires to install conveyors beneath the ESFR sprinkler system to support the processing of inventory. The conveyors are anticipated to be nominally 4 foot wide, measured across the conveyance roller, and would be classified as roller containers per NFPA 13. The town of Hamburg, as the authority having jurisdiction, AHJ, adopts and enforces the 2016 edition of NFPA 13 as part of their adoption of the 2020 Building Code of New York, BNCY. A strict reading of the ESFR sprinkler obstruction rules in NFPA 13, section 8.12.5.4 could allow for the interpretation that additional sprinkler protection is required underneath all objects that are over 2 feet in width, regardless of where that obstruction is relative to the floor or sprinklers. This section is meant to address objects, possible obstructions located near the ceiling that may exist above storage below sprinklers, such that water cannot effectively wet the combustibles that the sprinklers are designed to protect. It is not the intent of NFPA 13 to provide a blanket provision to require sprinkler protection under any objects greater than 2 foot wide, regardless of where that object is in relation to the sprinkler. For example, a few feet above the floor or in relation to a hazard. An object near the sprinkler poses greater risk inhibiting pattern of development and obstructing water from reaching the hazard than an object that is far removed from a sprinkler. Additionally, by definition, an object is not an obstruction, but rather part of the hazard only commodities sit on top and are not stored beneath. Fact number 4, the 2020 edition of NFPA 13 goes to lengths to distinguish between roller and belt conveyance and to clarify whether there is high piled storage under the conveyors. For the subject facility, there will be no high piled combustible storage under the conveyors. NFPA 13, both in addition, generally defines high piled storage as ordinary products, class 1 to 4, combustibles stored more than 12 feet in height, or plastic products stored more than 5 feet in height. Variance is
Number 5 is.
Yeah, number 5. Based on the discussion, HDI is submitting the variance to respectfully approve the provisions of the 2020 edition of NFPA 13 in lieu of 2016 13 when determined where sprinkler protection is required underneath the conveyors.
Accordance with above findings.
Yeah, in accordance with above findings, strict compliance to the Uniform Fire Prevention Building Code would entail practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship and would be unnecessary in light of alternatives which achieve the objective of the code more efficiently, effectively, economically, and granting the variance would not subversely affect the code's provisions for health, safety, and security. The determination is, it will bring the vote, where it is determined that the application for the variance is hereby granted with the following conditions. The following 2 conditions are that the conveyance is roller and not belt, and that the applicant will have communication in lines and other methods to prevent and police no storage beneath the conveyors.
Also move.
I second. I will take a vote. Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Shenny?
Yes.
Peter Klayman votes yes as well. So the matter is approved with the following disclaimer. The decision is limited to the specific building and application before it contained within the petition and should not be interpreted to give implied approval for any general plans and specifications presented in the support of this application. The hearing is now concluded. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll ask,
In the future, would this be similar to that other case where maybe we get limited variance or?
Possible.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, and it depends on the code official, the authority having jurisdiction, because if they're opposed to it, it has to go to the board.
Right, understood.
so that you could encourage someone to approach it, as a routine variance, but it would be Andy's prerogative to take it on.
Is that only in this region or is that the state?
Well,
Would that routine variance be?
if you're, as long as you let them know there's a previous variance.
Peter, I want to know if she's learning anything.
And we could refer to that.
Are we confusing?
It's a precedent set, so,
Great, good. I think we're gonna see a lot more conveyors. That's
okay.
That's really what we're the industry is moving towards.
There's support.
I really appreciate all your help. I mean, just getting it in time.
I hate to say it.
Working with us. We made it real close. And we were thinking a couple, yeah. I think you asked us to submit just the form to get it advertised. Yeah. So if we had to wait till August, I think they would have just put them in just because they couldn't get to the end of the building and not need it. Yeah, so it was.
Right on the line.
Yeah.
So that was.
Okay, good.
And
Yes, Ken, really nice.
So are you?
we were.
I'm from Maryland.